Explain that originally we had both of the gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side that had planned to attend. Apparently one of the candidates was preferring some other kind of format, wanted to speak second. We said no. The way we do it at our committee is we actually draw out of a hat who goes first and who goes second, and that's the only way it could be done. And you have a 50% chance of going second. Unfortunately, that wasn't apparently what they wanted to hear, and so that campaign has decided not to be here tonight. So as a result, we've asked the other candidate for governor to go ahead and do the 20 minutes and make themselves available also for some questions from you. So we're going to have that, and I understand also that our congressman hopefully is going to be here a little later this evening and probably say a few words. And then we also have with us David Sterling, who's a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court, who had asked to come and speak to us and has been a friend of our committee for a long time. So I'm going to let the candidates get into this. We're not going to go into a long explanation of who each of these candidates are and a long introduction. We're just going to go ahead and say that the first speaker is the 46th and current governor of Arkansas. He's a candidate for the Republican nomination in the 2018 Republican primary. And let's give a warm Saline County welcome to Governor Asa Hutchinson.
It's great to be in Saline County. It's great to be here in Benton. I remember being here 4 years ago. Of course, I might have been here since then, not at headquarters, but I've been here in Saline County a number of times. It's great to be back. I look here at your legislative delegation and what incredible leaders you have. I enjoy working with them, and I tell you, I hail from Northwest Arkansas, as you know, which is a strong Republican area, but Saline County is sort of the heartthrob of the Republican Party right now. I tell you, you got to do well here, and I'll tell you a story about elections. And this is Jerry Henshaw. Anybody remember Jerry Henshaw? He's a former Republican state legislator from Northwest Arkansas. He was there when there were very few. And he wrote a book on the first 100 years of the Arkansas General Assembly. And it was about gunfights and all kinds of things, but there was an interesting story in there about one of the first elections in Arkansas. And that was over in Arkansas Post before Little Rock was even the capital. In Arkansas Post, we were electing our territorial representative in the United States Congress because we weren't a state yet. And there's about 5 people running, but it really came down to the 2 top contenders. And there were only 1,400 votes cast in the entire state. The election was decided by 70 votes. A gentleman by the name of James Bates beat another gentleman by the name of Stephen F. Austin. Isn't that something? Stephen F. Austin lost that race, went to Louisiana, and then to Texas to co-found the Republic of Texas. So the moral of the story is, if you can't win in Arkansas, go to Texas. That's one moral of the story. The other moral of the story is elections matter. Just think how an election shaped history. How it shaped history. And it shaped Arkansas. And so tonight, I see Congressman Hill here. Yesterday, we were on Rattlesnake Ridge together. What a great time. His race is important. And so elections are important. They make a difference in the direction we go. And so I'm here in Saline County tonight asking you to go out and vote. And I know you will. That's why you're here. You're engaged in this. But it makes a difference in terms of history, in terms of defining our party, in terms of what we mean as a people in this state and the direction that we go. Now, as I mentioned, I was here 4 years ago, and I was here with Curtis Coleman. Remember that? Sure. Curtis Coleman and I, we had a show. We went to about every county committee in this state, he and I appearing in the primary together, and we finished that primary. It was a hotly contested race. We both worked hard at it. I prevailed in it. We came together, we united, we won in November. That's how a Republican Party functions. And I'll support the nominee of the party. I believe that is critically important for us. And then we get behind the nominee and we win in November. The other thing about the Republican Party is that we are a party of philosophy. You know, a lot of times on the other side, it's social engagement, and that's why their party fell apart. It's because they didn't have the structure of the party. It's because they were not committed to the right ideals that represented Arkansas. And here I have stuck by a consistent political philosophy since the days of Ronald Reagan, when he appointed me as a very young United States attorney. And that consistent political philosophy is really the same as Ronald Reagan. And that there's three parts to the Republican base, and that is, it is the social conservatives, it's pro-life, it was the defense conservatives, and it was also the economic conservatives. Well, put me in every one of those categories if you don't mind. I believe in a strong defense, and in Arkansas, it's about public safety. And I have stood my ground on enforcement of our laws in Arkansas. It was not easy and it was not popular all the time. When it comes to the economic side, it's lower taxes, limited government, it's putting money in the hands of people. They can control their life and they can spend it. This is an important philosophy for us. And when you're talking about the social side, yes, it's about the Second Amendment right that we have under our Constitution that's guaranteed. It's about pro-life values. These are things that we hold dear. And so that's been my consistent philosophy. And I bring that to lead this state. And you measure me, and I want you to measure me, and I'm going to leave time so that you can ask me questions. And whenever you look at how we've done, it's been done as a team. We actually have three branches of government, and there's friction between us. And I say that with great affection. And Kim, would you agree with that?
I think that is a good thing.
It is a good thing. That's how our constitutional fathers founded our country, on the separation of powers. That it's not always holding hands and singing together. And so we got a great Republican leadership in the House, and they believe in oversight. And they believe in oversight of a Republican governor, and that's okay. And so we work together, but at the same time, there's differences, there's friction. But you know, the net result is, as our fathers designed that separation of powers, is that we work together for the good of our nation and the good of our state. And so what we've done together is that we have lowered taxes, we have raised the bar on education, and we've created jobs in the private sector in this state. And guess what? That's exactly what I promised 4 years ago when I was in this room. We had a $100 million income tax cut, and now we're getting into this debate about offsets and all this stuff, which is such an odd debate, because that $100 million, there was no offsets to. It was something that we had to absorb through the growth of our economy and through efficiencies in government. And we absorbed $100 million in income tax cuts and still provided services and education in public safety and health care. And then the next time we came together, we did it again. We lowered it another $50 million on our income taxes. And those were two of the largest income tax cuts. And that's easy to say because, well, we had one before under Republican leadership, but these are the largest income tax cuts that we've had. Before that, it started with Dale Bumpers raising it. And that's what Democratic leadership did. We have lowered that bar. We have lowered the income taxes, and it's benefited 90% of Arkansans. And so we lowered taxes, and when it comes to the simple goal of education, we did something that no one else did. We moved Arkansas to the top in the nation in computer science education. We did that by putting it in every school, making it available for every student, and having a 400% increase in those students taking computer coding in our schools. And we're recognized now by Microsoft, Code.org, Google, and Wired Magazine as Arkansas leading the nation in computer science education. And then when it comes to creating jobs, I work hard at that every day. There's going to be another announcement soon of I believe it's a Swedish company that might be coming to Arkansas. So stay tuned. It's going to be creating jobs. And that foreign investment is good for our state because that's a new company that creates a new supply chain. And so we're growing in Arkansas. We've created 60,000 jobs. And you know what happens whenever you reach the lowest unemployment rate last year? that we've ever had, and whenever you create more jobs than we've done before and put more people in the workplace, something good happens, and that is SNAP benefits were the lowest in 9 years. We have fewer people on Medicaid today than when I became governor, because they're working, because they're moving up that economic ladder. And as Republicans, we believe in that safety net, but we also believe in that responsibility that is so important. And yes, I asked the Obama administration that I wanted a work permit so that we could make sure that if you're able-bodied and receiving these benefits, that you have a responsibility, individual responsibility, another one of our values, that you work if you're able-bodied or you're in training. And the response came back, no, we think it's an entitlement program. We don't want to put any requirement there. And they denied it. I went back to President Trump and I said, I want a waiver, so we put in a work requirement. He said yes. And on June 1st, Arkansas will be the first state to implement a comprehensive work requirement for those able-bodied people on Medicaid. Another value, individual responsibility. But as I've been reminded many times, that it's not about what you've done, but it's about the future. And that's good. I want people to hold us accountable. And I have a vision for Arkansas that is about growth. It's about sticking with our values. And I was asked to talk for a moment about what does 2019 look like in the General Assembly. And I'm talking about what my agenda will be, what I'll be asking the legislature to do, what are the things that they will obviously be bringing forward as well. And I've said that we need to continue the fight in Arkansas to have competitive income tax rates. Now, you got to start somewhere. And we started with $150 million a year lowering the income tax for 90% of Arkansans. We need to finish the job, and we need to flatten that rate from 6.9%, almost 7% income tax rate, down to 6%. Now, down the road, we want to go lower. So that's a good place to start. It's a $180 million cut on our budget. And that's our plan. That's what we want to work on. That is an objective that we have to help us to compete with these other states. And I know that when we're recruiting these industries, they ask about the interstate, and you've got it right here. They ask about the workforce, and you've got it right here. They ask about the quality of life, and you've got it right here. They also ask about those income tax rates. And when you're competing with Texas and Florida, you've got to work hard at it. And so we're going to do that, and I think we'll be successful. The second thing we want to do is education. And we have an incredible initiative now, Reading Initiative for Student Excellence. I went to Bryant, and I went to Farm Hill Elementary School.
Hill Farm.
Hill Farm, I'm sorry. Did you correct me, Congressman? You know everything in your district.
No, it's Hill Farm.
All right, Hill Farm Elementary School. And what was so exciting, because it's a RISE initiative, and I go in there, and fifth graders met me. And 10 fifth graders have a reading program for kindergarten students. Is that not something? And the 10th graders, the fifth graders go in there, and they get there at 7:15 in the morning. And they take the kindergarten kids that are dropped off by their parents before school, and they read to them. And then they told me that, yes, we want to make sure this continues after we go on to the 6th grade. And so we have developed a mission statement and a strategic plan to pass along to 5th graders next year. Is that not something for 5th graders? The initiative emphasizes the science of reading, which is, in my book, and what we're teaching is phonics. Going back to phonics, reading programs. It's the culture of reading in the community and the school, and it is following up. Somebody falls behind at 3rd grade level for the individualized plan to catch up. We want to focus on continued STEM education and job skill training that's so important. That we've done a lot in that area. We got more regional workforce centers. I know you're working on one here in Saline County with your leadership, and job skill training is critically important so that we can continue to build a workforce for the future. And then we've got to look at our infrastructure. I'm sorry it just took me too long to get here tonight. And we've already done a lot of work.
Every day, Governor.
Every day you deal with that. And every estimate says that we need more money for our highways in Arkansas to keep up. And so that's going to be a topic in the section as well. And then finally, juvenile justice as well. I won't go into it, but we've worked hard on our child welfare system. We've worked hard to increase the number of our foster parents that the faith-based organizations have supported us in. But we also need to concentrate on our juvenile justice system to make sure that we're treating those right and that we're handling those that should be in the community well and getting them the rehabilitation they need, and that we're protecting the public from those that might pose a risk. But that's a responsibility that we have as adults, as citizens, as human beings, to do right and to do the best we can with our children. And so that's part of next year's agenda as well. Let me just conclude on saying, yes, I'm here tonight asking for your vote. I would like to have your vote in the Republican primary and in November, assuming that you support me in that. I'd like, Susan and I, by the way, Susan is the best first lady I've ever known. And that's probably a good thing for me to say. But I tell you, she was speaking to Boys and Girls Clubs the other night, raising money for them. She's raising money for children advocacy centers. It's focused on the children of our state, that they have the right care and that they have the protection when they're suffering from abuse. And I'm just proud of her and the work that she's doing. She's been a great partner, and guess what? She's a volunteer. And so, thank you, Saline County. It's an honor to be here tonight, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
You brought up education, business. You kind of skirted over crime. What good is education if people get killed daily here because there's no real crackdown on the crime? And criminals are let out of jail off plea early. You've got prosecutors that do nothing but plea bargain down from felonies to light misdemeanors. So the question is, are we throwing our money away on education when there's a probability that the people we're educating get their brain full just by trying to? All
right, let me hand you the question. It's a very good question, and thank you for raising it. First of all, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I believe in the rule of law, and in case you didn't notice it, but it was sort of an international story. Last year was one of the toughest times that I had as governor because we had to execute 4 people. So the death penalty was carried out in Arkansas.
So that's
Let
the
me
problem.
finish.
You're saying you had to, when the jury found them guilty, they were sentenced, we housed them for years, and you had to execute.
Let's let him answer the question.
Well, you can quibble with my phraseology if you wish. It was my responsibility as governor. It had not been carried out in over 10 years in Arkansas. And it was not an easy thing to do. And you do have to look at whether there should be clemency granted or whether they should be executed. I did carry out the sentence of the jury. We obviously want to get it right in terms of the other crime. It is a challenge for us. That's why when I get criticized for spending money, yes, we had to spend $50 million more in money to build additional prison space to house violent criminals. I think that was a necessary expenditure of money. And we might have to come back and look at it more. I put in money into drug treatment courts, and so we put a lot into the drug task forces that the federal government stopped funding, by the way, and I had to put $600,000 to keep the drug task forces going. So your concern is absolutely correct. I think we've done a lot to address crime, and I don't think that's a weakness in my record. Is there another question?
Not going down.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know if you've ever ordered anything online.
Have I ever ordered anything online? Yes, I have. Absolutely.
Well, did you fill out your form on the back of your state income tax form when you're supposed to pay that tax?
I will say that I do not pay use tax on it.
Arkansas is like $100 to $100 a year, they collected on what it says.
Pretty good. I did get you in with the closeouts. What do you mean? Thursday.
I would ask that help small businesses, because
Boy, is this thing set up.
there's thousands of third-party
So how many people like that idea? How many people think it's a bad idea? There's a few, all right, so there's a little bit divided opinion there, but it actually, it's a great question, it's a fair question, and to me, it's a fairness issue, and, I do believe that, we got to, just like Amazon started paying online sales tax, they did that voluntarily in Arkansas, and so,
but not the thousands of companies.
there's a lot of them online that are not paying it, and it is a fairness issue. And we're looking forward to the United States Supreme Court case that's going to give the states and the federal government guidance, actually the states guidance, as to whether they have any role in equalizing that tax structure and improve fairness. And so let's wait and see what the Supreme Court does, and that should be by June 30th. All right, keep it coming.
Hey, Governor,
Yes.
homestead credit, you talked about increasing that session.
Yes, that does take a legislative change. Right now, your homestead tax exemption is $350. And there's money that's been built up in the fund that would allow us to increase it to $375. Now, you say, well, that's just a little bit of money, but up in northern Arkansas, they got hit with an assessment because one of their improvement districts went under. And so they got hit with about $15 every year on additional property taxes, and so this relieves that burden to them, and it does make a difference. And so that is something I'm asking the legislature to increase that homestead property tax exemption. And by the way, I just wanted to add one other thing. One of the things that we've done as a conservative legislature and governor is that for the first time in history, we have a long-term reserve fund. We have $120 million in long-term reserve fund. And we have created a surplus in the upcoming budget that we're budgeting for that surplus. And so we're really protecting our budget so that we have some flexibility in the event there's an economic downturn, and also setting the stage for tax cuts in the future, and gives us more option. That is a tool that is very effective to us. Yes?
Governor, do companies that look to come into Arkansas, do they seem to respond well to the fact that we have balanced budgets, or is that something that draws?
It is a selling point for us because they look at Oklahoma, for example. Whenever Oklahoma laid off, the schools were closing and reducing to 4 days a week because of budget cuts. When they look at Louisiana, their cuts in higher education because of budget constraints. Alabama had some tight times. And so the consistency and of the budget and the surpluses that are created and the reserve funds do make a difference, because a company does not want to spend sometimes hundreds of $millions to locate in a state that does not have stability. And Illinois is a perfect example of it. I get calls from businesses in Illinois that say, we're tired of it. And that's what they say, we're just tired of it and we want to relocate. And they're competing. They say, we may or may not come to Arkansas, but we'll consider Arkansas, we'll make the case. And great question, because we do utilize the stability of our budget and our surplus and our bonding capacity as a messaging tool. Yes?
Right now, our state is the second most pro-life state, and I thank you for that. My question is, what can we do to make it the number one?
That's a good question, and first of all, support Arkansas Right to Life. It's a great organization. They're a thoughtful voice in the pro-life movement, and I say that because they've got a group of lawyers that really want to overturn Roe versus Wade. And so they think, what is the ideal case to bring up through the circuit courts and to the United States Supreme Court that will nip away and will undermine and gradually reverse Roe versus Wade. And that's really a very important, thoughtful approach. And so they, every year, suggest some new ideas based upon their scientific research as to how we can do a better job of protecting the unborn. And so I won't get specific, but I know that there are some ideas for some pro-life legislation in 2019, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. Great question. One last question, because I want to make sure I leave people at a time here. Yes, ma'am.
Why should taxpayers pay for abortions?
Well, they shouldn't.
I mean, if they want one, let them pay for it, but not make us pay for it.
Well, actually, you're absolutely right, and in federally, there is a Hyde Amendment that was passed for Congressman Hyde that says federal dollars cannot be used to support abortion, which is taxpayer dollars. And in Arkansas, that is the same. And so we can't use taxpayers' dollars to fund abortion. Now, Planned Parenthood said that they take money and they just use it for family planning purposes, not for abortion. They keep it separate. But in Arkansas, because of what we saw nationally, Arkansas, under my leadership, defunded Planned Parenthood. I don't want to cut anybody off though either. Any other questions?
7:05.
Yeah,
Got a question here?
Question.
Right.
I've got a statement. I want to say thank you for the RISE initiative and everything you're doing for education. I don't know how many people are in this room that know the current literacy rate for the state of Arkansas and the impact the reading rates have on the penal system. A lot of y'all might understand, they look at the fourth and fifth grade reading literacy rates to determine the size of the prison system in 10 years. And I want to say thank you for what you're doing to increase the literacy rate in Arkansas schools.
I want to thank Ann Clemmer for what she does in education. She's a great part of our system. Stole some of the resources and great leaders from here in Saline County.
Real quick question on the budget.
Governor, I was hoping that maybe talk about the Supreme Court ruling on the voter ID laws now held.
I tell you, it really shows the importance of the Supreme Court and the elections that are coming up. The Supreme Court makes a difference to us. I mean, they made a difference in the death penalty cases that they had to hear, and they make a difference in being a check and balance on Judge Wendell Griffin. And when all the cases seem to wind up at his court or in Pulaski County, we need to have a Supreme Court that will, whenever there's an emergency, that will take the case and that they will follow the law. And in this case, they have only made a preliminary decision on their voter ID that they're going to allow it to proceed for now, and they'll have a final ruling on it at a later time. But I think they sent a signal that this is something they want to look at very carefully, and that they were not satisfied with the lower court ruling. I'll just tell you that the voter ID law that was passed by the General Assembly, I signed into law. I believe it was the right thing to do, and I looked at it from a constitutional standpoint, and I was comfortable with it. I do not want to deprive anyone of the right to vote. I want more people to vote, not fewer people to vote. And we want to make it easy to vote for them, but we also want to make sure that they have the same legal ID that we require somebody flying on an airplane. And I don't think there's massive fraud in Arkansas, but I do want to make sure there is integrity in the ballot, and that gives people confidence in our system. Yes, sir.
Real quick question, I think I mentioned the budget earlier. The budget is increased by several $1 million every year as you've been governor. I believe it's 172 for this year. If you're elected governor, do you know by kind of a ballpark figure by how many millions of dollars the state budget will be increased?
Great question, and let me just go back a little bit. I mentioned that, first of all, we have grown the state budget at a smaller rate than governors in the past and legislature in the past. So But whenever you are a growing state, like Texas, guess what? Greg Abbott's budget grew. Bill Haslam's budget grew in Tennessee because the needs of education increases. And so, for example, we have given 2 pay raises to our teachers in our public schools since I've been governor. I believe that's a good investment in the children of our state, and that's not, and also it's a constitutional responsibility. And so, yes, we have spent money in prisons, we have spent money in education, and next year there will be a recommendation from the legislature as to how much we have to increase education spending to keep up with the constitutional requirement under the Supreme Court mandate. And so that's just part of governing, is to adequately fund education. Now, in the other areas, I'm going to be as tight as I can be. And we have had a 1% cut across our state agencies. We've eliminated 1,000 employees. Did you hear that? 1,000 fewer employees report to me. I'll end on this, because I failed to mention, next year is going to be government transformation. That's going to be a part of the initiative in the General Assembly next January. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, reducing some of the departments of 42 down to fewer than 20. You don't eliminate them, but you combine them in a way to eliminate duplication and save taxpayers dollars and provide services better. Now, you right now can go down to the revenue office and, well, I'm going to put it this way. You actually don't have to go down to the revenue office and get that number and sit in a chair for an hour to get your car taxed. Because of our reform efforts, you can go online in the convenience of your home or car, you can pay your sales tax and get your car taxed.
Yeah.
And that is convenience, and it saved one business out of Missouri $250,000 a year. Just that one change. And so that's the kind of efficiency efforts, and we're going to be tight in our budget, but we're also going to meet the needs of our state. You all are terrific, and thanks for the questions. I know you got some other candidates here and our congressman who we've got to work for, I'm going to be working for, excited about him because he's a great leader for us. Thank you all very much.
Okay, the next person on the agenda for this evening is a 2-term congressman for the 2nd District of Arkansas. He is the unopposed Republican nominee for Congress in the 2nd District. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm Saline County welcome to Congressman French Hill.
Well, Governor, thanks for being here tonight in Saline County, one of the fastest growing, most popular, high growth portions of the state, one of the fastest growing Republican populations in the state. So you picked a good place to be tonight, because this is where the votes are. We're glad to have you. Great to see everybody. Sheriff, how are you? Good to see you. Ann, nice to see you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for letting me have a few minutes. Thought I'd give you a quick update on what I see happening this year compared to a year ago. It's a new day in Washington, D.C. It's a day where something that we talked about in 2013 ad nauseum about how do you get the boot off the throat of the economy by changing the regulatory system in Washington is step number 1 for getting a faster growing economy. And that's something that Donald Trump has done and done successfully in his first few months in office. He promised that he would get rid of 2 regulations for every 1 regulation that the government bureaucracy cranked out. And he's actually gotten rid of 4 regulations for every regulation that the bureaucracy has tried to crank out. He has a woman named Naomi Rao, who is a Federalist Society member, who was a constitutional law professor at George Mason University in Northern Virginia, who is his regulatory czar working for Mick Mulvaney at OMB. And it's her job every day to see that paper flow coming across bureaucracy and have a simple one-word answer for it. No. And she's doing a terrific job. And we've seen it across community banking, we've seen it in healthcare, we've seen it in across our industry, that we have a better shot at getting a better outcome for creating more jobs. And as a result, you've gotten 1.1 million jobs created in the country. You have the NFIB index of small business at the highest level of optimism in 3 decades. You have unemployment rates at the lowest level. As the governor referenced in Arkansas, you see that across the country. You see people seeing that their optimism about their economic future and the economic future of the country is better. I just was polling in the last few weeks, and people feel very optimistic about the economy. And I've been polling either at the bank or in politics for about 12 years. It's the most optimistic I've seen Americans in a long time about the economic prospects for the country and their personal prospects. And this is exactly what I think the president campaigned on, and something all of us who've had the economy as a top priority have wanted to see. Second thing, in addition to regulatory reform and right-sizing the burden of the red tape machine, is after 3 decades of trying to get consensus on cutting tax burdens at the federal level and reforming the corporate business tax, Trump and the Republicans in the House and Senate got that done last year. And it was a big achievement. It was a big achievement. I always say on the business side of it, of lowering the corporate tax rate to a much more globally competitive number, this was, for the 20 or 30 years I've been involved in economic policy, a bipartisan idea. It was Bill Bradley of New Jersey said that's something we had to do next. Danny Roskankowski said we needed to do more. A lot of ACE's former colleagues when he served in the House, that was a bipartisan plan. In territorial taxation, where we tax income abroad by Americans more than we tax it here. Why would we do that? And so we ended that. And not a single Democrat voted for it. Not a single Democrat voted for it. Something that was a bipartisan objective. Lower corporate rates, make small business more competitive. Our international companies, make them more competitive. Give them an incentive to move back to the U.S. instead of to Switzerland or Panama or wherever. And we did that. And not a Democrat voted for it. I've got 4 primary opponents that are, I can't say they're duking it out, that would be too generous. They're flailing around at each other over the Democratic primary. All of them said they would have voted no on the tax cut bill. All of them say they're for Medicare for all. They're for bigger government. They're for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. Nancy Pelosi means unwinding the tax cut. That's what it means. Nancy Pelosi means re-regulating our small businesses, our farmers, our healthcare administrators, our teachers. So that's what shocks me, is not a one voted for it, when I know for a fact from working in this arena for so long